Now we're going to start having some fun. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new route, and I'm just going to call, say, testing here. So what it's going to do is in the terminal, SvelteKit is going to recognize a new route's being created, like so. And you'll also see that the manifest has been updated. So what it's doing there is it's adding an item to the components array, which then gets exported as this this route like that. No other code has been changed actually. So the stuff that's been inside of the runtime and the components will stay the same. It'll work the similar way. So what I will do now is I will actually show you what happens when you make some links and what happens in the actual generated code from the node router. So let me just show you this little file here. So I'm going to add some links in here and just a test, and then go back to home page. I've just changed the layout. So let's just go into Chrome and we'll refresh the page. So the start.js, let me just shut down the other ones. So there's a class called router, and there's a init method, and in the init method, we've seen it before. Basically we're adding listeners to the window object, and as we click on the links, it's going to actually fire this listener here. So I mean, just to prove that to you, if you go to the console and you type add event listener, that's going to work on the window object, just in case you're confused, because if you go to Mozilla, it's going to be the same target, but the target already is that event listener. Okay, so let's just continue. So obviously the page is running now, and when we click on this, it's going to come in here and it's going to check some various things, and then it's going to basically find the href if the href has a property on the target, and there's going to be some history navigation, and this is currently running within the dev mode. So I'm not sure if some of the routes or any routes or server-side rendering has been happening yet, but I think if we add some server-side logic in the load functions, then we'll actually see some more interesting interactions between back-end processes and the client, and that'll be quite interesting. So let's just run the test route right now, and let's just click home. So as expected, the click method is coming here, and we're just going to hover over some of the properties. So this is enabled. That's probably the property on the route called enabled or not. And we're just doing some things here which they've adapted from the source code, checking to see if there's a button, and just some stuff to do with the keyboard shortcuts. There's good reasons for this, but I'm not sure what they are, but I trust the people's opinions that made this stuff. So there's a method called find anchor, which is just taking in any event object target, and it's going to just look for that property on there. So basically it's just checking the node, and the node name is anchor, and that's what that's doing. And if it's false, probably it will go a run. So basically if it's not an anchor, it returns as you'd expect. Okay, and if there's no href, it returns, which would be an invalid anchor of course. So it's actually also doing a check from some special properties with SVGs, and if a link is inside an SVG, in this case both href and target are always inside of an object. So that's an edge case there. So it's actually also checking to see that the href is equal to the location. So that if it is the same location, then it's going to not do any navigation, I believe. We can prove that to ourselves by coming back in here in a minute. Ignore tag if it's downloads, okay, and then it's creating a URL. Don't handle hash changes, that makes sense. Okay, so we have the special URL object, which just makes it easier to parse things. And this parse URL is returning an object with this information. I'll actually just step out of this. So their info contains this, and there's no query search parameters here. Let's get some tea. My voice is getting a bit dry. Okay, so if there's info, we step into this here. We're checking to see if there's some kind of scrolling going on, and then we're changing the state. So we're currently at test, and then now we are at this location here. And then there's this .navigate method. And so let's just, we're coming to the end of this function here, so we're just going to step into that and see what's going on. So the navigate is part of the router, I believe. Let's double check that. Yep, it's part of the router. Okay, so the navigate just takes in the info, it takes in this scroll thing, this chain, and this hash, and then it's going into the renderer, which we looked at before in the last video, I believe. And so there's this thing called notify, which we'll just step into because now we've got a bit more context. And I think some of these methods they weren't actually called in our previous video because we were just looking at the start without doing any interactions. Here we're doing interaction, we're clicking on one of the links. And the nice thing about these links is that we're not having to add any libraries in there. So like for my Svelte Full Stack Starter episodes, we're using like a navigation library for SPAs, and basically you have to import them and then use link and then modify the code. The nice thing about this is that we're not actually modifying the anchors. It's pure vanilla JavaScript or vanilla HTML, and this Svelte is sort of taking that and doing this clever logic around it. Hopefully that makes sense. So this dispatch event is doesn't actually be used by the framework. It's basically, you can use it for something like integration tests. So if you can imagine, like in back in the day in AngularJS, there was something called protractor, and it sort of knew when the framework was doing things, and you could use it for your testing. This is a sort of a similar idea. Okay, so that is pretty much all I wanted to cover for the initial navigation. And so when that's done, then the new component will load. So we run this notify function, and then we work on removing trailing slashes. Okay, and then there's something called render update, and after that happens, we have this focus on the body, and we do something called deep linked, and some scrolling. Some logic for calculations and scrolling. So let's look at the render. This will be interesting. So we're navigating to the home route, and if we just go to the page here, so this is the home route. So basically we will see this text being added. So let's go into the renderer update. So async update, that's going to be part of the renderer, I believe. Okay, so we're going to step through this navigation result, which is an asynchronous function, and we're doing this thing called navigation result. So we step into that, and where have we jumped down to here? We're in get navigation result. Okay, when we step into navigating result, we seem to skip a large part of the code, which I'm not really sure why. So I'm just going to refresh the page here. I'm going to go on to test again and refresh the page so we're at the same point as we were before. So click on home. Okay, so we're in this update function and we're calling get navigation result. I mean, source maps is never perfect, you know. So I'm just going to step into this. So basically what we're doing looks like we're just loading the correct let's just step through this. So we go through our routes, we get one route here, and we go into this while statement. So we get so there's two routes. Well, the current info has what does it have? It has two routes, and we're looping through the routes. Okay, so it looks like we're just doing something with a loader here, creating a loader function. Let's just see what loader is. So loader's getting passed in from somewhere. Okay, so this is the loader, it's routing back to the manifest, and this import is doing the, I guess, the VT imports on the browser. Okay, so we'll just skip over this one because it's doing some stuff behind the scenes. We've got a promise there. I've got this page object which contains host, params path, and we do this thing called await load. And load does this stuff. So we get a result. I think we've seen it before, haven't we? Got this change flag. We've got all these component promises. Yeah, it's basically instantiating components. I'm not really sure on what the internals does in there, but we end up with this navigation result, which has this thing called state and props. So it basically says if navigation result.reload, we run reload. Else we do our if it's a redirect, we do a redirect somewhere here. Navigation, new URL, location, so that's going to change the page. A lot of complexity here, boys and girls, I won't deny it. Trust Svelte to do the best stuff. So this stuff started, then it's got something called current navigation state, and then I've got this thing called root, which I'm not sure what that is. This .root.set, let's just check where root is. 483. Okay, no docs on that. Okay, root is basically this thing called CRSL, component types internal. This navigating set null. Navigation end, so you basically use that one of your end-to-end tests if you wanted. And there we have our component rendered now. Yeah, I even missed where that rendering happened. Somewhere in the midst of this. Okay, so that in a sense is the rather complicated route navigation which goes on with dynamic routes. So that will probably be enough for this lesson here, and we'll continue exploring these themes within the next videos here. So they've got some VT code that's been run there as well. So you can see why these open sources projects are not basically one-man projects. So anyway, I hope that was relatively interesting for you. It was kind of interesting and discovery for me, but thanks very much, and we'll see you next video. Bye bye.